Hey, Pin Dude here. Welcome back to my vintage pinball restoration update number 3. Williams Rollergames, 1990. Last episode, got the cabinet done. Got that in the house where it's nice and safe. Got the head out here. Gonna start working on the head right now. So let's do a quick overview of what we're starting with. Alright, so here we are with the head. It's been sitting in the house all this time. From the outside it doesn't look so bad. Luckily the graphics on the side are in pretty good condition, but there is some issues. There's some wood missing. There's a complete layer of wood missing right down here. All your normal chips and bruises and bumps. You can see on the top all of the black paint is flaking off. It's also doing that on the sides. It's all planked. The top layer applies all planked. We're going to try to fix that the best we can while saving the original graphic. Do the same thing I did on the cabinet, which was repaint most of the black, hand touch up any of the screen printing that we need to do, and then clear coat the whole thing. The translate is in good shape, but the trim is either broken, like right here, or it's actually missing some pieces. Need to fix that. The display, when I fired up the game, this top display I think was okay. This bottom one was pretty dim. So I'm hoping that is something on the board that is making that dim, and I hope it's not an actual outgassing display, because these can be a little hard to come by, and I do not like going to the newer LED displays. I don't like the look of that. I much prefer to stay with the original displays. So I will do whatever. If I have to replace a glass, I will buy some untested glass or whatever on eBay and try to piece something together that works. But we'll deal with that when the time comes. Here's the other side. This side's actually a little bit worse. We have many more gouges and scrapes, more damage in the artwork than the other side. But overall, not too bad. Graphics pretty good. The reds are nice and bright. And the back is okay. You know, the black is chipping and peeling, but we'll have to deal with that. So let's take the translate off and see what we got inside. Alright, so the insert panel, there was 3 different versions of this. The earlier prototypes had 15 flasher bulbs throughout the insert panel. The early production units had the holes for the 15 flashers, but didn't have the flashers installed. And then the third, latest version did not have the holes for the flashers. Obviously, I have the version without the holes for the flashers. But I will be adding the flashers to this game, so I will be drilling the 15 holes and doing all the wiring work for that. I will be doing a separate video for that in the end when I get the game done. So inside we have a working System 11 board. The game did work when I bought it. We have a working soundboard, we have a working power supply, and everything was working okay. We will have to go through all these boards, cap kits on the power supplies, check all the fuses and the fuse clips. The only repair that I've already done to this game when I bought the game, none of the GI worked as typical. All the pins on the interconnect board were completely fried, and all the traces on the GI circuits on the interconnect board were lifted and broken. I've already done all the repairs on that so that I could test the game and make sure the GI was working before I took it apart. So that's the only thing I've done in here. Obviously the display board's going to need some work, but at least everything's here, everything's working. The knocker is here. Alright, so let's get everything out of this head so we can start working on it. Alright, so before I go any further with the cabinet, because we're going to be doing a lot of bondo work and sanding before we repaint the black, I need to protect the original graphic here. If I didn't protect this graphic with something and I started sticking blue tape or something on here, there's a very high chance that I will damage the artwork, and we don't want to do that. So what I did is I clear coated just the image, in this case the girl, on this back box. So what I did is I got some tracing paper and I stuck the tracing paper on the girl and traced out the image of the girl, the shapes. And then I took that tracing paper and I stuck it onto some craft paper, and then I cut it out with a pair of curved scissors so that I could apply the craft paper to the side of the cabinet and just the image of the girl would be exposed. And then I used the same Rattle Can semi-gloss Rust-Oleum 2X clear coat that I'll be clear coating the cabinet ultimately in the end. I did about 4 lighter coats of this. And then once that dried, now I can stick tape on here and I don't have to worry about this silk screen lifting off the cabinet. So it's kind of hard to see, but you know, everything's dull over here because before I did the clear coat, I sanded the whole surface with 600 grit sandpaper to give it a key so that the clear coat would stick. And now that we have that protected, now we can go in, sand down this black, not completely sand down, but just scuff it with a more aggressive sandpaper, and we can bondo all our corners and bondo all the little dings and stuff, and then we will mask off the girl and paint the black. Okay, now that we got the side graphic protected, we need to start sanding the cabinet. So what I'm going to start with is the top of this game in particular has a lot of flaking and planking, and basically if I rub my finger on this, a lot of the black paint will just fall off. So we're going to sand this down, and then on the bottom is just bare wood on these. So we're going to sand all this, a lot of this I believe is somebody touching up the game at some point. So we're going to sand this bare wood to make it cleaner looking. And we're going to do those 2 surfaces with a power sander. I'm going to use my trusty Ryobi orbital sander. And I have 120 and 220 grit discs to use on this. And the goal for the top is to not take it particularly to bare wood, but we need to get all this loose paint off and get a smooth surface, get all this planking out. And then again on the bottom, we just want to clean up that bare wood so it has a nice even look. And those are the only 2 surfaces we're going to use the power sander on, because obviously both sides have artwork we don't want to damage, and the back has the silk screen for the caution warning. Alright, so let's get this out of the garage, because I don't like to make a big mess in the garage, and start sanding. So we got the top done. It's nice and smooth. We smoothed out the transition between the ends and the top. And we got all that loose paint off and all the planking sanded down. And the bottom we got all that excess paint and everything that was off, and we have a pretty smooth surface. And this will get finished in the end with hand sandpaper and a sanding block. Alright, now we're going to do some hand sanding. And we're going to start with the inside of the cabinet. And since there's a silk screen on the back here, I'm going to be laying this on its back. We don't want to just lay it on its back without protecting it. So I'm just going to grab a blanket and lay that on the floor. And then we'll put the cabinet on that. And that'll at least protect the silk screening, so we don't want to damage that in any way. Alright, so the inside I'm going to be repainting all the black on the inside. And there's actually a bunch of rust down here, and all the wood's not very smooth. So we want to smooth all this all out so that when we put our fresh coat of paint on, it'll look good, because all these edges are exposed. The back glass actually sits down here. So we want to have a nice crisp black all around here. And I'm also going to re-spray the inside with the black so it'll look better in there. So I'm going to start with 220 and see how that goes. And I have what I use for the hand sand. It's just these. They're called Durablocks. They're just small pieces of foam that you can wrap your sandpaper around. This one's stiff to make nice, crisp, square corners, and this one's real flexible. So you know, if you have a more rounded surface or you want to ease an edge, it's real good for that. So let's get sanding. Alright, so that's quite a bit of messy work for what mainly will not be seen once the game is back together. So again, what I did there, that was 220 grit, and then I finished with 320 grit. And 320 grit's really all you need on wood like this, especially since we didn't take it down to bare wood. So once we get that cleaned up, that's pretty much ready to go. So now we just got to sand carefully the sides with the silk screening on it, and then we're going to be ready for bondo. Alright, so while we're doing all this nasty, dirty sanding, tumblers have been running all day and night doing parts. Got a whole bunch of the metal parts done for the cabinet already. And as I do them, I just label the bags. The T is for tumbled, and the C there is for corn. So that means it's been through both processes, and all these parts are just looking fantastic. We also got the metal grill for the back box painted, and over here we got all the black bolts are painted. So all the black hardware is also done. So we're moving along. Still a long way to go, but we're moving along. All right, so now I'm just sanding the back, and I'm using 320. I just want to get the back smooth, and I'm going to be sanding around the caution label here. Before we clear coat, we'll sand over the caution area with some 400 or maybe 600 just to get a key before the clear coat. But the key here is to get all this black smoothed out. It's real rough. The back is particle board on this cabinet, so we got to get this all smoothed up so we get a nice finish of black on it in the end. So let's get going. Alright, so slight change of plans on the back. After I got done sanding the 320, I carefully gave this a quick wipe with Windex, and it smeared the orange paint a little bit. It didn't do any damage, but I had orange paint from this caution label on my paper towel. So I went over this real lightly with 600 grit to give it a key, and I'm going to put a clear coat on it to protect this caution right in while we do the rest of the cabinet. Ultimately, everything's going to be cleared with this anyway, so I'm just using the same Krylon, this Rust-Oleum 2X semi-gloss clear, and I'm just going to spray a couple light coats over this caution label to protect it. Alright, we did like 4 lighter coats of clear coat over the caution label. And I'm just going to peel the mask off, and we're going to let that dry before we sand the last 2 sides that we have to sand. And then we'll do that, and then we'll get on with bondoing. Alright, so I let that clear coat dry. And now we're going to sand the two sides that we have left, carefully sanding around the silkscreen graphic that I had previously clear coated. And I'm just going to use by hand some 320 to smooth out the planking here, and so we get a nice smooth surface to paint the black. Alright, so this is where we stand now. We're all the rough sanding's done. And, you know, it has to look ugly before it starts looking good. But once we get some of the edges crisped up a little bit with the bondo and get the black paint on there, the head will really shine. Alright, so we're going to get started on some of the filler on the cabinet. And I just use bondo, regular car bondo that you can buy at any auto parts store or hardware store. I've used this all the way going back to when I was doing video arcade game stand-up cabinets, and I really like the way it works on the wood. Some people use wood filler, some people use a two-part resin. On this particular cabinet, there's not any big chunks missing. There's just little chunks here or there, so bondo's going to work real good. And then you need a spreader. I just buy these in bulk. These are 4-inch, I believe, spreaders. And then I just take a pair of scissors and I cut it down to whatever size that I need for the particular job that I'm using. And then you need something to mix the bondo on, because there's two parts to this bondo. There's the gray part and then this red hardener. So you need something to mix it on, and you want that surface that you mix it on to be non-porous. So you want to use a piece of plastic or something. So I use a piece of plastic. It happens to be a no trespassing sign. And this is what I use to mix my bondo on, and then take it over to the cabinet and work with it. And then after I'm done, I clean off all the hardened up bondo, and then I can reuse it as many times as I want. The other thing you're going to need, if you're kind of sloppy with putting on your bondo, you put it on kind of thick like I do. Once it hardens, it can be a bear to sand. So this, I call it a cheese grater. I actually don't know what the official word is, name of this tool is, but it's just it looks like a cheese grater, and it's just to kind of get started with getting the bondo shaped the way you want it, and then you sand it afterwards. But this just makes quick work of getting the shape that you want on that bondo. So that's really all you need. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to start by taking my blowgun and just blowing off any loose dust or sand and dust that might be left on the cabinet from when we sanded it. And then we won't have to worry about any of the sand and dust getting stuck in the bondo. Alright, I'm going to start by cleaning off my mixing board here just to make sure it's clean, since it's been hanging in the dusty garage. As you can see, it was not clean. And then we're going to open up the bondo. Oh, actually first I'm going to cut this spreader to a more usable size here for what I'm doing. I'm actually going to check on the cabinet to see if that's kind of the size I want. Alright, now we can open up the bondo. And I'm wearing latex gloves here because I hate getting bondo on my hand. And we also have to mix this up too, because I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of watery on the top. I haven't used this in a little while. So just like paint, we just want to mix this up. And now we can put a dollop on the mixing board. And you don't want to go crazy. You know, the working time is, you know, really in the minutes with this once you mix the hardener in. So you just want to start with a little bit. You can always mix up more later, but there's no point in wasting a whole bunch right off the bat. So I got a little dollop there, and I'm going to take the cream hardener and I'm going to make a line across the bondo. And what we're looking for here is a pinkish color, and you want a nice uniform color. If you don't have it nice uniform color, if you have streaks in it, that means you didn't mix it good enough. So that's looking pretty good. Alright, so let's go to the cabinet. Alright, so this isn't rocket science here. We just want to get the bondo on the cabinet. And some of you might be better at this than I am. I just kind of wallop it on there. I'm kind of overdoing the corners because I want to end up with a slightly square corner in the end. And the chances of you getting this on one coat, you know, realistically is not very good. So don't worry about getting it perfect on this coat, because you're going to be sanding this off. And there's going to be little potholes, little divots in the bondo. And you're going to, you know, you're going to have to do it again. And this is why it's nice using a non-porous mixing board. Once it starts hardening up, you can peel this right off. And then I just use some mean green on here to get the residue off. And the mixing board's all ready for the next mixing. Alright, so we got the sanding on this coat of bondo done, and it's came out good. It's pretty much done. There's a couple divots here or there, but you can see we got nice crisp corners now, and we filled in a bunch of the marks. Like there was a big scratch here and just various divots all around the sides. We also cleaned up some damage on the front of the game. And then here's the other side. So here's the other side. We got nice crisp edges here now. So everything looks pretty good. There's a couple small divots that need to be filled, but once I do that, we will be ready for paint. There's a couple little tiny little pinholes that I got to mix up a very small amount of bondo and just fill those in, give it a quick sand. Alright, so to do the sanding on this, as I typically do, I put on way too much bondo. I always tell myself I'm going to get it on there a little smoother, but I never do. So to start the sanding, I used my little cheese grater thing here on a handle. This is made by Stanley, and it does say on it, it is called the Sure Form Shaver, part number 21-115, and I got this on Amazon. And it's just a little cheese grater with a convenient handle. And I use this to knock down all the high spots in the bondo. It makes really quick work. I mean, it takes like a couple seconds to get the bondo shaped to the shape that you want. And then I have a bunch of these various pieces of wood. They're just little scraps of wood. I wrapped the sandpaper around them, and I put a couple staples in them. So I have 150 here, which is just to roughly shape the bondo the way I want it. And then I went to 220, and then 320, and then 400. And then after the 400, I used my Dura block here and wrapped this with 600 grit. And then I went over the whole cabinet with 600 to smooth out all the sand and scratches and really smooth out the bondo. So the cabinet is pretty much ready for paint, and we will be doing paint in the next video. Alright, so that'll do it for this episode. This was episode 3 of the pinball restoration update on the 1990 Williams Rollergames. So we got the head all ready for paint. In the next episode, we'll be starting off with masking and painting the black on the head, and then doing the clear coat, the buffing, the final cleaning, and then starting to reassemble the head so that we can hopefully, within short time, get this head into the game room and bolt it onto that shiny cabinet that we did in the last couple videos. So look for episode 4 of the pinball restoration update on Williams Rollergames in the coming weeks. I also hope to be starting to tinker with the 1977 Stern Stingray that I picked up in Allentown. I hope to have a video up on that in a few weeks where we start to power on, check voltages, and try to get that game up and running. I'll also have some pinball tool spotlights coming up. So make sure if you haven't subscribed to my channel, My Vintage Pinball, please hit the subscribe button. Please like this video, and feel free to leave a comment, share the channel, and that'll do it. So this is Pin Dude from My Vintage Pinball. See ya.